day everyone, I'm Lidimay A. Kalubag, and in today's video, we're going to review the quality of the textbook in terms of its contents, learning outcomes, assessments, activities, and so on and so forth by using Scriven's criteria. But first, what is textbook? So, textbook, it is a book that is utilized as a standard work for the study of a specific subject. So now, we're going to have a book review, particularly the subject of science. But before we begin our review, allow me to introduce first to you the title, the authors, the publisher, and of course the copyright date of the textbook. So here's the textbook. So, the title of the textbook is Science Beyond Borders. The authors are Evelyn T. Sarte, Edna Liza R. Garcia, Eliza A. Lopez, Mary Jean G. De la Cruz, and of course, Harold A. Aradaza. And it was published by Vibal Group Incorporation, with main office at 1253G Araneta Avenue, located in Quezon City, Philippines. And it copyrighted in 2016 by Vibal Group Incorporation. Now, let us go on to the reviews based on Scriven's Criterion. We have 4 codes for how we will assess the criteria. First is a positive sign if the textbook is a yes and of good quality. Next is the 0 sign if it is alright but not of good quality. While if it is no or poor quality, then we will have a negative sign. And lastly, NA if it is not applicable. So first is if the content covers a significant portion of the course competencies. So for me, it's a yes, because it has a good quality in which it has aspects of a front cover, including the title and the authors. So it's a positive for me. Next is contents are up to date. So it's a yes for me also, as what I look to be each of the topics are still very necessary for the learner to master. Though it was published 2016 ago, but the contents are still need to be learned up to date. So it's a positive sign for me. Next is reading level is appropriate for most students who will use the material. So it's a yes for me as well, because the terms or the words that are used are simply can be understood by the learners. So it's a positive sign for me. Next is intended learning outcomes, competencies are stated. So it's a yes for me, as the intended learning outcomes are stated clearly in the textbook. Such objectives of this unit is to identify the properties of materials to determine whether they are useful or harmful. So they stated clearly in the textbook, so it is a positive sign. Next is formative and summative assessments are included. So, since it has assessments after the lesson here, so it's a positive sign for me. It's a yes. Next is activities are varied to meet the needs of students. And it's a yes for me because it indeed meet the needs of the students, as the activities is well engaging and exciting. So it's a positive sign. Next is teacher's guide is included with management suggestions. So since there are some guidelines that are given, so it's a yes and is of good quality. Next is materials are presented in logical order. So since it has explicitly stated in logical order, so it's a yes and is positive sign and of good quality. Comes competencies and or tasks. So for me, the learning outcomes and competencies and even some tasks make a lot of appropriate. So it's a yes and a positive sign. Next is the degree of match between learning activities and intended learning outcomes. So, as what I've observed, so there's a match as the learning activities here are tied to the expected learning outcomes. So it's a yes and of good quality. So it's a positive sign. Next is quality test items and degree of match with the intended learning outcomes. So as what I've observed here, the items are very simple to answer, and of course it also match with the intended learning outcomes. So it's a positive sign. Next is the quality of direction on how students will process through the materials. So it's a yes because the instruction for each lesson here are very simple to follow and understandable. Next is the quality of drawings, photographs, and for other materials. So it's a yes for me since the quality of each photo and illustrations are very clear and can be readily identified in the textbook, as you can see. Although it's black and white, but it's obvious and it's clear. Here. Next is the overall design of the learning activities for individual institution. So it's a yes and of good quality as the designs of each learning activities are engaged in achieving and demonstrating the intended learning outcomes. Next is the quality of management procedures for teachers. So as what I've observed, the procedures in this textbook are for teachers to organize and oversee and of course monitor the learnings of the students. And lastly, optional. List course map competencies covered by the instructional material. So it's a yes because there are some contexts and almost contexts are relevant to the topic. So the students can be more easily visualize difficult ideas, situations, and lessons. So it's a yes and a positive sign. So as we all know, the purpose of a textbook is to act as a guide to the set curriculum and syllabus to guarantee that the topics covered are consistent across the schools and nations. So therefore, I can confidently assert to all of you that the overall review of this textbook is of good quality because it links knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values to both the teacher and the students. And I can also highly recommend this textbook because it provides instructions for teaching and learning. That would be all. Thank you.